The Blood Banyan Tree, Part 2. Standing behind Khan were Lai the manservant and two other servants, all with their hands folded in front of them, solemn and respectful. Every now and then, Lai would glance up to check whether Khan had done anything yet. But after a long while of watching Khan just stand there staring blankly at the tree, not making a single move, he asked, "Sir, why haven't you started cutting the tree yet?" As soon as Lai spoke, he noticed something strange. Khan was trembling. Trying to maintain a stern appearance, Khan secretly wiped the sweat from his brow and slowly turned to ask Lai, "Does Mr. John's household have any female servants?" Lai replied, "Aside from old Madame Mao, who's been raising Miss and Hung since she was little, there's no other female servant in the house, sir." "But why do you ask?" Lowering his voice, Khan leaned in and whispered in Lai's ear, "Then who's that woman sitting on the banyan tree right now? Is that Mao? Why don't you call her down? Letting her dangle like that, if I chop the tree and it falls, she'll be dead for sure." Only then did Lai realize that Khan had finally encountered that thing, something all the servants had seen at night but no one dared to talk about, assuming it was a ghost. After all, Madame Mao was already quite old, frail and nearly blind. How could she possibly climb a tree? Besides, she always slept in the same room with Miss and Hung. If she weren't there, Miss and Hung would have known. Khan knew he'd just seen a ghost, but still stubbornly refused to believe his own eyes. He was convinced it was truly Madame Mao, and that his disbelief in spirits was fully justified. Determined, he urged Lai to call the woman perched on the tree down. Lai, trembling like a leaf, took a few hesitant steps before falling to his knees and begging, "Please, sir, that can't be Madame Mao. She's with Miss and Hung right now. That thing up there, it's a ghost, sir. If you care for me at all, don't make me go." Hearing that, Khan paced back and forth, forcing himself to be brave. He took a deep breath and growled angrily, "Fine then. Since you're so stubborn and refuse to obey me, then I'll chop down this tree myself. Even if that old hag falls to her death, she has no one to blame but herself." With that, he gripped the axe tightly and approached the tree. He raised his arm high. Suddenly, the night sky turned violet. Thunder rumbled, lightning flashed, and wind and rain howled all at once. Just as Khan lifted the axe over his shoulder, a blinding lightning bolt struck across the sky. In that instant, the woman on the tree was fully illuminated. She was an old crone, with wrinkled skin, lips red as blood, and teeth white as ivory. She let out low, gurgling moans, like something was gnawing at her insides. Strange bubbling noises came from her eyes. Her pupils pushed in and out, as if something inside her skull was trying to escape. Khan shuddered in terror, nearly dropping the axe. Lai looked up too, his gut twisting. He stammered, "Madame Mao, Whyryu." Khan panicked and was about to flee, but then he heard Lai mutter the name of the woman in the tree. It was Madame Mao. So she was a real person, not a ghost. A living, breathing human being. Upon hearing that, Khan's fear vanished. He stood firm, watching closely. Not wanting the servants to notice how terrified he'd been, he decided to cut down the tree no matter what, to prove he'd been right all along. That there were no such things as ghosts, and to make sure Lai, Mr. John, and everyone else in the house would open their eyes to the truth. "There. I told you, there's no such thing as ghosts. You refuse to call her down, so if she falls and dies, don't blame me." Khan swung the axe into the trunk of the banyan tree. Though large, it wasn't truly ancient like others of its kind, about the size of a longan tree, so it quivered under the blow. Suddenly, the old woman burst into a shrill, eerie laugh. She began to crawl swiftly down the tree toward Khan. He jumped back, startled once again, nearly losing hold of the axe. But Lai's earlier words gave him courage. This wasn't a ghost, this was a person. Khan readied himself, waiting for her to reach the ground so he could kill her with the axe in hand. The woman's body was withered and dry like firewood, her skin wrinkled and leathery, just like the witches told of in old forest tales. She was terrifying. But even ghosts must submit before the truly evil, because aren't all spirits born of evil deeds? If anyone had no fear of divine retribution, it would be people like Khan. Now consumed by malice, Khan raised the axe high as if to strike the tree, but in truth was lying in wait. The moment she reached him, he would strike her down. The woman moved like a rat, swift and nimble, and hung from the branches like a monkey. Her neck hunched like a turtle's, her face bulged like a dumpling, drooling like a ravenous tiger. Her arms bounced as she dropped from the tree, lunging straight at Khan's throat. Just then, Khan seized his chance and shouted, "You old hag, die!" He swung the axe backward toward her. In an instant, her head flew off and rolled on the ground, coming to a stop at Laia's feet. Laia's eyes bulged with horror as he fainted on the spot. Having beheaded the woman, Khan turned back and hacked violently at the blood banyan tree. Up and down he swung, putting all his strength into each blow. The tree didn't last long. Within the time it takes for a single stick of incense to burn, it groaned and crashed to the ground. His task complete, Khan sat on the ground, panting, his axe resting beside him. He shouted with bloodshot eyes, "Now Mr. John has to marry and hung off to me. And he won't get a single benefit out of it." He then stood up and disappeared into the house. Lai looked at Khan, now drenched in blood from Madame Mao's corpse, and clicked his tongue in dismay. He turned toward the lifeless body inside. "Now that Madame Mao's dead, who'll take care of Miss In Hung? We'll have to hire a new maid for her, I suppose." Then he looked at the fallen banyan tree and added, "If it were really that simple, then the master wouldn't have made a wager like that in the first place. Khan has just wasted his effort." With that, he too walked off, leaving only the two old servants behind, still dazed, not understanding what had just happened, nor what Lai meant. They looked at Madame Mao's lifeless body lying alone on the ground. The two old men carried her corpse off behind a bush and dumped it like any other body. Her severed head was kicked aside, out of sight. To say their actions were inhumane might not be entirely fair. After all, if one day they ended up like that, they could only hope someone would move their body somewhere, away from trampling hooves and gnawing beasts. In that sense, they were lucky. Early the next morning, Khan dressed neatly and headed to the main house with a smug look on his face. Mr. John was already seated on the wooden platform, his face pale and shaken. Seeing Khan's gleeful swagger as he stepped through the door only deepened his sorrow. Seeing the gloomy look on the landowner's face, Khan became even more convinced of his victory. His mocking voice echoed from afar. "So, the great landowner is still sulking over losing the bet? I told you already, people without brains always do foolish things. Being granted your daughter as a concubine is truly a delight for me." As Khan spoke, the landowner's already dark expression grew even darker. He immediately snapped back. "What did you say? Concubine, what do you mean by that?" Khan sat down at the tea table, picked up a teacup, and took a loud gulp. Then, revealing his true scoundrel nature, his face no longer resembled a scholarly man but that of a lecherous lowlife. He said, "Oh? You didn't know? That's strange. Everyone in Hatan knows that Khan Dai is already married." At that, the landowner nearly fell over in rage. You couldn't really blame him. He wasn't privy to all the gossip from the city. Besides, Indochina University was a prestigious institution, and just hearing someone studied there brought admiration. No one would ever question the character of its students. And with the trend of westernization going around, people talked about monogamy, one husband, one wife. Having a second wife was considered immoral. The landowner had never imagined Khan would turn out to be that kind of person. But Khan didn't get to gloat for long. Rather than staying furious, the landowner suddenly burst out laughing, his laughter echoing through the entire house. Khan was stunned, not understanding the old man's reaction. He cautiously asked, "Landowner, are you so heartbroken over losing that your mind has started to go?" The landowner's face turned serious again as he replied, "Don't flatter yourself by saying I've gone mad. Let me tell you, you haven't won anything yet." Khan, still riding high, replied with a smirk, Ah, so the landowner intends to break his word? You think since I left the box with the contract at your place, you can simply turn your back on our deal? He reached into his coat and unexpectedly pulled out a contract identical to the one they had signed. The landowner's eyes widened. You? When did you get the contract back? Khan answered. You're funny, landowner. Did you really think I'd trust you enough to leave something that important in your care? You see, the French have this thing they call magic, which tricks the eye. You thought you saw me put the contract in the box, but really, I slipped it into my pocket. He said this, eagerly waiting to see the landowner explode in anger, so he could enjoy one more moment of triumph. But to his surprise, the landowner didn't take the bait. He calmly stroked his beard and said, "Oh? So I nearly got fooled by you twice, huh? But in the end, it's still you who's going to lose, whether I have the contract or you do." Khan sneered. You must be so angry that you've lost your mind. Let's not joke around. The matter has been settled. The banyan tree was chopped down by me. As for the maidservant, I admit I killed her by mistake. But don't try to use that as an excuse to dodge your end of the deal. The landowner replied. A servant girl isn't worth grieving over. These days, they're a dime a dozen. A handful of rice is enough to get a line of people at my door begging for that job. But let's get to the real issue, the wager. Do you truly believe you cut down that banyan tree? Khan asked. What, didn't I? Don't try to backpedal now, the servants saw it with their own eyes. And right now, that tree's lying in the middle of the road, that's the clearest proof of all. The landowner stroked his beard and asked, You truly believe that tree is lying in the road? The way he asked made it sound like mockery. Khan couldn't hold it in. He stood up and dragged the landowner out of the sitting room to the gate, ready to confront him with the truth. But the moment they stepped outside, Khan's world turned upside down. The banyan tree, the very same one, was still there, standing tall as ever. In fact, it looked even greener and more vibrant than the day before. And on the trunk of the tree, terrifyingly, was a face. A human face. The exact likeness of Ba Mao. Cold sweat drenched Khan's back. He stammered. How could this be? This makes no sense. I chopped it down myself last night. Ask the servants, they saw it happen. Feigning curiosity, the landowner said. Oh? All the servants saw it too? Then why don't you call them over so I can ask them myself? Khan hurried off to summon the 3 servants from the night before. But when they stood before the landowner, each of them twisted the truth completely. Sir, we didn't see anything. Maybe Master Khan just had a dream and confused it with reality. Sir, I didn't even leave my room last night, so I don't know what happened. Sir, Master Khan told me not to disturb him yesterday afternoon, and he never called for me again, even into the night. Hearing this, the landowner nodded with satisfaction. He walked over to Khan, patted him on the shoulder, and said, So you had a dream, and you thought it was real. Since you don't believe in ghosts, this is the only way I can explain it to you in a way that makes sense. I appreciate you sharing about your family situation, too. I had even considered letting you and my daughter get to know each other better. But now, it seems Hung doesn't have the virtue to become your wife anymore. Khan was gasping for breath, nearly to the point of coughing up blood. Finally, he forced a crooked smile and said in protest, Yes, I admit I can't outsmart a sly fox like you. But perhaps you've misunderstood, Mr. John, because the agreement hasn't actually been fulfilled yet. Mr. John narrowed his eyes and asked, What do you mean by that? Khan replied, What do I mean? Well, the agreement didn't specify a deadline. There's no specific time mentioned by which I must fell that banyan tree. Mr. John nodded slowly. Ah, I see. So, I gain nothing from you. You're twisting the terms to dodge your loss and deny me the council seat. Clever move, indeed. A learned man like you has many tricks up his sleeve. I can't keep up. Khan shook his head and deflected. Oh no, perhaps you've misunderstood my intent. I'm not the kind who goes back on his word like you, Mr. John. I'm a man of my word. I said I would take Miss Sin Hung as my wife, as a concubine, and I will." As Khan spoke, he emphasized the words "as a concubine," clearly to provoke Mr. John. But instead of getting angry, Mr. John burst into hearty laughter and said, "Very well, but you'd better act quickly. Because after this incident, I've learned my lesson. In any future wagers, I won't leave any loopholes like this. Miss Sin Hung will be married off sooner or later, and once I've secured the council seat, that agreement will be meaningless." Khan's face darkened, and he said nothing. That very day, he left Mr. John's house and was not seen returning. Mr. John assumed that this marked the end of their fateful connection, that the relationship with the almost son-in-law from Indochina University was over. He believed Khan's words had been no more than the heat of the moment, bitter from defeat, trying to save face with a few parting jabs. But to his surprise, Khan did return. Not only that, he brought with him a Frenchman and a large mechanical truck. That afternoon, Mr. John received Khan, who introduced the foreigner. "This is Monsieur Frederick, the Western District Chief from the Resident Commissioner's office. I personally invited him here, and he's brought a mechanical truck to uproot that banyan tree." Mr. John respectfully greeted the man. The French officer gave a slight bow in return. Mr. John immediately called down to the servants, "Bring refreshments for the foreign officer, quickly." A woman's voice responded from below, "Yes, sir, I'm coming right up." Soon, a young woman entered the room. Her skin was slightly dusky, but she had a certain charm. Upon seeing her, both Khan and the French officer couldn't help but swallow their saliva. Khan turned to Mr. John and asked, "And who might this young lady be, serving us tea and tobacco like this?" Mr. John replied, "Isn't that thanks to you? Half a month ago, you beheaded Madame Mao. There's still bloodstains in the soil as proof. And Hung is all alone now. Her mother died young. Without a woman's hand to tend the household, who else could serve if not the maid?" Khan nodded and grinned. "Ah, I see. For a moment there, I thought she might be one of Miss Sin Hung's cousins." Mr. John stroked his beard and said slowly, "If you like my maid that much, why not take her instead? That would end our bet, and I'd ask for nothing more." Khan responded coolly, "You do love to joke, don't you, Mr. John? Trading a maid for a noble daughter? That's hardly a fair bargain." Then he pointed toward the Frenchman. "This time, I've invited Monsieur Frederick to open your eyes a bit. He's brought a mechanical truck. All it takes is tying a rope around that twisted banyan tree and letting the machine do its work. It will rip it up from the roots. Everyone will see it with their own eyes. You won't be able to deny it any longer." Mr. John seemed intrigued and asked, "So, when do you plan to do it?" Khan replied, "Right now, of course. The machine is already outside, fully prepared. Monsieur Frederick only has time this morning. He's a high-ranking officer, not a commoner like us. He can't afford to wait around." Mr. John had heard stories of the French and their powerful machines, how they could even drag massive boulders, let alone a tree. He believed it instantly. But a worry crept in. What if the tree somehow reappeared after being toppled? After all, this was a ghostly tree. Even the servants had whispered to him that Khan truly had managed to cut it once. He hadn't believed it then, not having seen it himself. But if it reappeared again this time, not only would he lose everything, but his hopes for a political future would be dashed. Ultimately, whether Hung ended up with Khan or not wasn't entirely a bad outcome. Khan had powerful connections. Given Hung's beauty, it wouldn't be long before concubine became wife. Modern men didn't cling to old customs. Marriages and divorces came and went like meals. If they liked each other, they stayed. If not, they parted. So, Mr. John had already made up his mind. If he lost this wager, he'd shift to another strategy, urging Hung, once she became Khan's concubine, to scheme for his benefit. Having thought it all through, Mr. John nodded in agreement, allowing Khan's team to hook the machine up to the tree. That very morning, in front of Mr. John's house, a crowd gathered. Many townspeople came to see the spectacle of a mechanical tree pulling. And what a strange tree it was. Though it had only grown for perhaps a year, it was now as large as the ancient banyan tree at the village entrance, perhaps even larger. Its canopy cast a wide shadow, its leaves red-yellow like autumn despite it being high summer in August. Not a single green leaf in sight. A thick rope was tightly secured to the truck's hook, the other end wrapped firmly around the tree's trunk. Behind Mr. John stood 3 of his servants, Miss and Hung, and the maid. For some reason, ever since he agreed to let Khan pull the tree, he had felt uneasy, his heart restless. And Hung, too, felt a burning anxiety, unable to stay cooped up in her room. She urged the maid to bring her outside to watch the tree being pulled down, hoping it might calm her nerves. As the truck's engine roared to life, the tree swayed and leaned several times but clung stubbornly to the earth, as if a giant refusing to bow. Frederick pressed the gas harder, tires spinning and spewing white smoke. Khan looked anxious too, fists clenched in tense anticipation. While tension gripped the elite crowd watching the scene, something else stirred. From the distant horizon, a mass of famine-stricken villagers stumbled toward the banyan tree, like starving ghosts circling their prey. The more the tree leaned, the more vitality these people seemed to show. Some stood tall, eyes gleaming like stars. Others mumbled prayers, pleading, hoping, seeing some kind of light. It wasn't just Mr. John, Frederick, and Khan hoping for the tree to fall to realize their ambitions. From another perspective, the starving people also longed for the tree's collapse, as if it promised a rebirth, a new hope. Behind Miss and Hung, the maid, silent all this time, suddenly stepped close, grabbed in Hung's hair, and whispered in her ear. Traders who sell their country for glory, landlords who bleed the people dry, your time has come, the light is dying on your kind. And Hung shrieked and tried to turn around, but the maid had already slipped a knife through her hair and scalped her. At that very moment, the blood banyan tree crashed down, uprooted entirely, its massive roots torn from the earth. Only a few thin roots still clung to the soil. Soon they too would wither and die. The crash of the falling tree drowned out T and Hung's panicked screams and masked the attention of Monsieur Frederick, Khan Dai, and Mr. John. At that very moment, T and Hung was being flayed alive by her own maid. Her once beautiful face was drenched in blood, her eye sockets gouged out in a frenzy, and her head severed clean from her body. The gruesome fate she suffered was a mirror image of the cruelty her father, Mr. John, had inflicted upon the starving peasants in the past. By the time Mr. John and Khan Dai turned around to witness the horrifying scene, it was already too late. Shouts erupted from all sides as the peasants roared. "We starve because of the landlords and tyrants, rise up, brothers and sisters." The voices of the starving masses surged like a tidal wave, joined by the thunder of gunfire. The French soldiers barely had time to react before the enraged peasants descended on them, dragging them down and slaughtering them. Monsieur Frederick, still fumbling inside the truck, didn't even understand what was happening before a bullet tore through his skull, killing him instantly. Mr. John and Khan Dai finally grasped the full extent of the chaos. They locked eyes in sheer terror and cried out, "It's a revolt! A revolt!" Mr. John turned to his butler Lai and the 2 elderly servants, barking orders. "Quick, go out back and bring the carriage around. I must flee to Tam Dao village immediately, these people have risen up." But instead of obeying, Butler Lai responded with a chilling calm. "The revolution says, tyrannical landlords who exploit the people, traders who sell the nation to curry favor with colonial officers, they must be punished." Mr. John shouted, "Insolent fool! What nonsense are you spewing? Stop this madness, or I'll cut your wages and let you starve to death like dogs." But before he could finish, Butler Lai raised a heavy wooden staff and pointed it directly at Mr. John's face, yelling, "You let them kill Madame Mao, did you ever think of us? If we follow you, even in death there'll be no one left to bury us." Without another word, Butler Lai and the 2 old servants lunged at Mr. John, swinging their staffs with practiced precision. Just as he had once commanded them to beat starving peasants to death, they now returned the favor. They did it with such efficiency that in moments, Mr. John's head was smashed to pulp, his brains splattered everywhere. A starving dog wandered by and immediately lunged at the bloody mess, licking up the scattered brain matter. In that grotesque scene, even the dog devoured the remains of a man whose heart was more beast than human, so vile that even beasts might have recoiled. Only Kandai remained standing, frozen, watching the utter chaos unfold around him. The peasants stormed in from all sides, hunting down the wealthy to unleash their long-suppressed fury. He looked toward Ti and Hong, now just a bloodied, skinless body. Her maid had stripped her completely, exposing raw muscle and sinew. The sight was nauseating. Ti and Hong crawled toward Kandai, grabbed his leg, and rasped through a throat choked with blood. "Kandai, save me. I'll be your concubine, please, save me." Terrified, Khan screamed and kicked her hard in the head. "No, get away from me. Get away. You're not worthy." Then he turned wild-eyed, unhinged. The scene around him was like a descent into hell. Just yesterday, life had been filled with luxury and abundance. Today, it was a waking nightmare. He turned back and saw that the blood banyan tree he had felled was no ordinary tree at all. It was slowly transforming into fragments of human bones. The branches, leaves, and roots were all formed from human remains. Even the gaping hole torn into the earth by the roots was now filled with fresh, red blood. From the distance, a gaunt woman, skin clinging tightly to bone, approached the pit. From within it came the wailing cries of a baby, hoarse and shrill with hunger. Just as Khan glimpsed this haunting scene, a sudden scream behind him made him jolt in fear. It was Butler Lai, his own horrified scream. He too let out a blood-curdling cry, and without hesitation, smashed his own skull with a wooden staff. His brain burst apart, and he died just as so many others had, killed by the same brutal tool he once used to murder. He died because he recognized the woman approaching the pit. She was once a friend from his days of hardship, a woman he had heartlessly betrayed and killed. But she was dead. Why had she returned? Perhaps there was meaning in the way the woman looked down at her belly. If Butler Lai had made a different choice that day, would things have turned out differently? If he had offered food just once, would 1,000 others have been spared? If just one spark of kindness had ignited, could it have changed the fate of many? And if this entire society learned to think that way, would we still see scenes of people devouring their own? No one knows. The woman picked up the child from the pit. It had already grown to the size of a 6-year-old. She stared into the child's eyes and asked, "Are you hungry, child? Let's go beg for food in another land. I still have one more friend. Uncle Lai." Khan stood frozen in place, everything finally clicking into place. And just as he understood it all, his consciousness faded. He felt a stabbing pain in his skull, then nothing. He was dead. As for the blood banyan tree, it was a symbol, a grotesque monument to colonialism and exploitation. Its fall signified the collapse of a regime that fed on blood and bone. The woman was the breath of the era, an embodiment of time itself. Every era has its own way of revealing the consequences of our choices. The destiny we face, good or bad, is ultimately ours to shape. The end.